And then as the story turned personal and stuff, I realized, oh, this is not a story about a synthesizer, and I don't want to do this because I'd never meant for my personal life to be on display like that and put my family's life on display like that. And so I really did stop for a second because it turned into an actual documentary. and then and then I thought about that and realized that if I was struggling with this, then there was a good chance that other people could relate to this story and have that same kind of struggle, even though, yes, it's about a synth, but not about a synth, right?
Right.
It's a personal family story. And I kept filming in the hope that it would actually turn into something that people could maybe use as a tool to start a conversation within their own family or something.
Good day, filmmaker Alison Tavel from RESYNATOR, premiering December 13th. Alison, how are you today?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I am better after watching your film.
Aw.
It is so amazing, and it has that one twist in the middle that no one, I was watching with my wife, and she's, whoa, and that no one sees coming. But
Me neither.
as we're doing this on, yeah, as we're doing this on December 3rd, I couldn't help but ask, is it just kismet that you ended up doing the interviews on this day? It's the 36th anniversary of your father's passing. Can you talk a little bit about how all of this ended up happening, like coinciding on this, where you're doing like premiere stuff and then all this on this day?
I can't believe you clocked that. Yeah. Yeah. When I told Lisa to schedule this, it's on my mind, obviously. And this year of him turning 36, that he died on his 36th birthday, I turned 36 this year. All of this has been very heavy on my mind. And the car crash was on the 28th, and I premiered Resonator in Japan on the 28th. And so it's just all of these things that give me pause now, but they also give me pause because 10 years ago, I didn't think of any of these dates. Like, he was not present in my life. And so I didn't think about his birthday. I didn't think about the anniversary of his passing or his crash. None of that I wasn't thinking about any of that 10 years ago. So this film changed my life.
Wow. And that's really, normally I ask people how they got involved in filmmaking, but one of the other things that I was trying to track as I watched the film was this took decades. There was a scene where you talked about being 25, and then I was trying to calculate, one of the scenes looked like it was from 2016, and I'm like, wow, she's been working on this for over 10 years, I imagine. So I imagine those stories so coincide how you got involved in filmmaking and how you made this film.
Yeah, exactly. So it was 10 years ago. I started
Okay.
filming in 2014. I was 25, and which I didn't realize at the time was the same age my dad was when he started working on the Resonator. And yeah, I was not a filmmaker. I was an assistant on tour. I worked for Grace Potter at the time, and that's what started this whole thing. I just was trying to document the resurrection of the synthesizer because I was around all these musicians, and I thought it would be cool to show this little mini doc and then get them to make music with it. And it wasn't about my dad. It wasn't about me trying to be a filmmaker. I still don't consider myself a filmmaker. It's weird, but I just wanted to tell this story. And then as the story turned personal and stuff, I realized, oh, this is not a story about a synthesizer, and I don't want to do this because I'd never meant for my personal life to be on display like that and put my family's life on display like that. And so I really did stop for a second because it turned into an actual documentary. and then and then I thought about that and realized that if I was struggling with this, then there was a good chance that other people could relate to this story and have that same kind of struggle, even though, yes, it's about a synth, but not about a synth, right?
Right.
It's a personal family story. And I kept filming in the hope that it would actually turn into something that people could maybe use as a tool to start a conversation within their own family or something.
Completely. So when people are watching this film, they're almost taking, would it be correct to say that they're taking the journey with you? Like, it started off, the first few interviews were about the Resonator and like a musical aspect of things. And I thought, oh yeah, father-in-law who's into playing guitar, he'd love this. And then it takes that personal turn. Would you say that's like your the audience is right there alongside you with the discoveries.
For sure. And that was actually the intention from the beginning when it was just supposed to be a synth resurrection project. The reason
Right.
why I put myself in front of the camera was because I knew nothing about synthesizers. And you can definitely see that on camera because I don't know the difference between software and hardware. I didn't know the difference between monophonic and polyphonic. Okay, if you think about it, it's obvious, but I just never had a reason to think about it.
Right.
So I didn't know. And so I wanted it to be, because especially in the synthesizer world, it's a very male dominated place.
True. Yeah.
And I remember getting on a message board being like, I'm doing this project and help me. And here's the resonator and whatever. And these synth people attacked me. Like nobody was nice about it. And I was just trying to raise some money to resurrect the synth. And it was the wrong move. I understand that. But I really wanted to show that on camera because if anybody like me was interested but intimidated, I thought maybe they could watch me learn about it in real time and maybe that might help people learn along with me. And so, even though I look like an idiot, I'm okay with it. Hopefully, I redeem myself in the end. But it took 10 years. But it wasn't this overnight thing. And I'm still learning how to solder. And Richard Lingenberg, who's in the film, he's been teaching me how to calibrate the resonator. And it takes a long time to learn this stuff, especially when it's not intuitive. I didn't grow up playing music and I didn't grow up around synthesizers. And so it really has been such a learning curve for me to be able to talk to really brilliant people like Mike Beagle and Richard. It took forever for me to understand their language and for them to understand mine.
I think I found that message board, Allison. I was reading, I think a couple days ago, there was like a resonator on eBay or something, and you had bought.
Oh,
I feel like their story could continue on even past with a film.
yes, that new thread, that eBay thread is a new one. This was like back in teen, I was trying to raise some money, and then when I did my Kickstarter in 2019, there was actually one guy from that original thread who had dissed me a little bit, and he apologized.
That's
And
crazy.
yeah, and it's fine. Like looking back, I never should have jumped on those threads and done it that way, but I should have. I should have, and I'm glad that I
Yeah,
did.
hell yeah, you should have. I'm glad.
I'm gonna own it. I'm gonna own
Glad you
it.
did too, Allison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that
So
eBay thing was a new thread because I got an email from a Kickstarter backer saying, "Hey, I found a link, an eBay auction with a resonator. Here's the link." And I clicked on it and it was shipping from London. And Peter Gabriel's synth company had bought 3 units in 1980 and we didn't know where they were. And this was one of those units and I bought it and we got it up and running and it's legit.
that's wild.
Yeah. So
That's
there's still
wild.
more out
So so maybe we'll see a Resonator 2 down the line. So, Allison, can you walk me through what the process was of the like making of the film in terms of what would you tell a documentary filmmaker in terms of funding, in terms of filming, in terms of organizing all your shots? Did you keep a shot list? What kind of advice would you give somebody now that you're on the other side of this and going to South by and a ton of great festivals with this film? What kind of advice would you give documentary filmmakers?
we don't have enough time in the day. It's so hard because I had no prior education about filmmaking. In the beginning, it was just, oh, I got to bring somebody to hold this camera. And then it was, oh,
Right.
I should have hired sound. And then I didn't have a
Right.
shot list. It was years before I started having a production schedule and with a shot list. And we need cutaways. Oh, yeah, we need B roll. Oh, yeah, we need establishing shots. Oh, yeah, we should probably have these two cameras match the color. Every shoot that I did there was no prep because it was like, oh God, I'm going to do this thing. Can I pay you for the day to hold this camera? So in the beginning, it was all chaos and all learning. And then eventually I figured out what to do. But I was funding this thing from day one myself. And I had friends and family donate and it was a challenge. And that's again why it took 10 years is because I had to pay for it myself. So I had to keep a full-time job to be able to pay for the stuff. And so 6 years ago, I had to quit touring to be able to finish the film. I had to be in LA. And so I had to get a day job in LA. And so I started archiving. And so I've always had a full-time job. Filmmaking has never been a job. It was just this one thing that I needed to do. And yeah, I think that my advice would be if you do this route where you don't have funding from day one and you are just starting out, the two most essential things would be a post-production supervisor, because once
Okay.
I realized that this was a film that actually was going to end up at festivals and on a platform
Right.
and theaters, that's where my education plateaued. And I go, okay, I can't
Okay.
learn this in real time. I need somebody like that. So a post-production supervisor is definitely what you need. Money is definitely what you need too. I don't really, I was lucky that I was able to figure it out. I raised like 100 grand in donations, but I put in hundreds myself. And some people just can't do that. And I was able to, again, because I took 10 years and I had a full-time job and whatever. A post-production supervisor for sure. And an editor. I learned how to
Yeah.
I was my own assistant editor for a really long time to save money. And I learned
Wow.
how to multi-clip and create sequences and pull selects and sync everything up and work in Premiere Pro. And I got pretty good. And then I hired an assistant editor to check my work and make sure that I did everything right. And but I was my own assistant editor for a really long time. And then I couldn't edit this myself. I was too close to the story. And I knew that if I was going to spend money on anything, it was a good editor, because this story has a lot of threads and it's very personal. And I just needed someone else to edit it. And especially after years of filming. And so an editor and a post-production supervisor were really essential. But I also had a couple of producers who did such great work and they helped me along the way and were so supportive and stuff. So I did have a team of people. It wasn't just me this whole time. It was me the
Right.
whole time for a few years. But it was, I had so many friends and people who came on as producers, John Lulo and Brendan Walter and Sarah Nesson and Barbara McDonough. And then once the film was finished, I had Rick Krim and Grace and all of these great executive producer type people, and this and Jimmy Jam, who has no real actual executive producer credit in the film because I met him too late, but he's definitely an executive producer and he's helped spread the word, and he hosted my premiere and he's now in the film. He did a demo with Mark Ronson, and there's just been so many people who have come to support it. And I think that I was able to rally the community because it took 10 years, because people have been following along this story. So I don't know, this is a really unique situation. I think if I were to ever do it again, which I won't, I don't know how I would do it. I don't know how I would do it. That answer
It's
your
so awesome.
question?
It does, Allison. And I'm just thinking how awesome this is that you basically went to the roulette wheel, put it all on red, and it's been successful. Like, you've premiered at South by, 100% Rotten Tomatoes. Like, the reviews have all been like awesome for the film. So that must be extraordinarily gratifying. Have you thought about what you're doing next? Are you going to continue down this route of filmmaking, or are you just going to concentrate on music? What's next for you, Allison?
I'm an estate archivist for Tom Petty. I do music archiving and I love that
Awesome.
job. It's such a great job and I get to be creative. I get to direct music videos and EPKs and stuff, and but I love archiving. I love preserving artifacts, which is funny because that's exactly what I've been doing for my dad for the past 10 years. It's like preserving his
Right.
artifacts. Yeah, and yeah, so I don't think I'll ever do this again. I love storytelling and I think I'm a good storyteller, but I know it would be different another time, a second time, right? Like it wouldn't be this way, but the idea of thinking about another project, all I know is that it takes 10 years and everything I have to be able to do something like
Right.
this. Until I learn differently, I could never say I would do this again. And this film's not even out fully yet. I
Right.
if I spend 10 years on this, I'm probably going to spend the next 3 years making sure that everyone, how as much as I can help it, everyone sees it
Right.
because I put so much work into it. And so to start on another project, no way.
Love it. Love it, Allison. Indie film podcast, love hyping other people's projects. I'll phrase it a little bit different. Are there any documentaries you watched where you thought, you know what, that's really going to help me? That's a North Star. Or did you just not really watch a lot of films? You just made what you felt was the right way?
Everybody would suggest films along the way. Oh, it's a father
Right.
daughter story. You should watch this. And I've seen like
Interesting.
a few docs, but I really didn't watch that many because it would give me such anxiety to watch documentaries when I was trying to make mine. So I only can watch comedies. I can't watch anything heavy. I
No,
really just
I
couldn't.
bet.
But I will say the story that really spoke to me was Circus of Books.
Okay.
Catherine Robson was my editor. She edited that. And I watched that and it was this really sweet story of this shop on Santa Monica Boulevard that sold gay magazines and stuff. And it was run by this very unassuming Jewish couple. And it was their story. And there was archival elements, there was verite, there was present day interviews. And it had all the elements of mine. And so when I watched that, I was like, oh, this is what I want mine to be. And so that's why we reached out to Catherine and asked if she was available. And so I always loved that. And then this year I saw Any Other Way, the Jackie Shane story by director Michael Mabbitt and his co-director Luca, but I only met Michael. God, I love that film. And he just, the way that they told that story of Jackie was so compelling, and the animation was so amazing. And that was a moment where I was just like, I got over my film and I was like, God, I wish I'd made this. It's such a great story. And we've been doing festivals together. And so I've seen it a couple of times now, and it's just brilliant.
Love it. Alison Tavel, the film is Resonator. It's streaming on December 13th. Check it out. It's fantastic. I'll link it in the show notes. And I loved it. I love the twist and I love the happy ending. Like, it's got everything. It feels extraordinarily personal. And maybe that's why it's getting so many great reviews. Go watch it. Streaming on December 13th. Alison, thank you so much for joining me on this special day on the podcast.
Thank you so much. And thanks again for highlighting that. That's really cool.